All right. Okay, so we'll go through the usual ones we go through, and we can sing the Tibetan ones and read the English ones. Sangye chedang soki chognam la jangchu bardu dakni kyapsu chi dagi chenyen gipe sonam ki rola penchir sangye druparsho sangye chedang soki chognam la Jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi dagi chinyen gipe sonamki rola penchir sangye druparsho sangye chodang soki chognam la Jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi Dagi chenyen gipe sonamki rola penchir sangye druparsho. 4 immeasurable thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And here we have the 7-limb prayer. Visualize as best as you can. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And now we present the Buddha or the Guru Buddha with a mandala offering of a completely purified universe. Zaji Peki Jukshin Meto Tram Ram Lingji Ni De Gen Padi Sangye Jing Du Mi De Waki Drokum Nam Dakshin La Chapasho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayam. Okay, so then we kind of imagine that the Buddha, the Guru Buddha, our teachers, they're here with us as we are going through this next session. All right, so now we're on to the second topic in the initial scope of the Lam Rim, and that's impermanence and death, and how we relate that to the Dharma. I need to say that the following teaching that's here is based on the work of Lama Tsongkhapa in his Lam Rim Chenmo, Pabonka Rinpoche, and Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and a heavy basis on Venerable Thubten Chodron, some of her teachings that I found online, and they're way back in the 90s in, I think in Washington. But her Western take on the Lam Rim is the best I've seen. I mean, really, really, really good. So I rely a lot on her expansion of it for Westerners when in going through this. So again, I'll open with, this is a part of Lama Tsongkhapa's Foundation of All Good Qualities, which is like an abbreviated, at a glance, Lam Rim. Really, what he's done, and it's terrific. So this is how he talks about the second topic. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. So here he's talking about impermanence and death, and this is the second topic. The gradual stages of the path to enlightenment, or the initial, intermediate, and great scopes of the Lam Rim, were first introduced to Tibet by the Indian master Atisha, and then later they were really expanded on, and a lot of commentary done by Tsongkhapa in the 14th century. And then from there on, many teachers, particularly the Tibetan teachers, interpreted the Lam Rim, made commentaries on the Lam Rim. And so we have that going on right up to this day. So the point of this is to sort of make this accessible to people like us who grew up in the West and with the culture that we have, so that we can, so that the teachings don't seem foreign or alien to us, or coming from some, culture from long ago. When the Buddha gave these teachings, they were relevant then, and they're just as relevant now. So here's, we'll do a review of the first topic that we covered, which was the first topic of the initial scope in the Lam Rim is about a precious human life. What makes a human life precious? We talked about that, and the reason that is the initial topic is that it helps us to recognize the rare opportunity that exists for us in terms of making spiritual progress on the path, because we have a fortunate human life. And so the topic makes an attempt to shake us out of this deeply ingrained tendency we have to take our current situation for granted, to not realize what a good thing we have going on for us. And so to wake us up to that, to wake us up to the incredible opportunity that we have right now for positive transformation. We talked about the freedoms that we currently have from 8 kinds of existences that have no chance, there's no chance to practice the Dharma. Those are called the 8 freedoms. We also talked about 10 favorable aspects, or the 10 endowments of our present human life. And these are both personal endowments and societal endowments that are conducive for practicing the Dharma. We discussed how the Buddha is not asking us to believe in him or his teachings, but is asking us to thoroughly investigate them. This is a really important point. If we're uncertain about particular assumptions in Buddhism, we can take them on board tentatively, like any good scientist would, as hypotheses. That way we can look into the Buddha's teachings without completely committing to them, so we can test their logical or observable consequences for ourselves. And that's one of the things from the start, I loved that about Buddhism, because it was not like any other religion I had sort of dabbled my toe into. It wasn't asking me to believe in anything. It was a far more scientific view, where the Buddha is just, his expertise as if you want to call it a scientist, was a study of the mind, study of consciousness, and he presented his findings based on his experience. So it's up to us to look at them and see what we think, and to make a decision for ourselves about it, not to just take it on blind faith. They will never, none of the teachers will ever say to take any of the Dharma on blind faith. They say, test it out, see what you think. If it works, use it. And as different things in the Dharma you see that they're working for you, that gives you a little more faith to look into the weirder things that we don't quite understand now because of the way we perceive things, and to trust that maybe there's something there. There are short-term benefits of a precious human life. There are short-term and ultimate benefits that we can derive. In the short term, not only can we have a good life now by practicing the Dharma, but we are able to prepare for our death and future rebirth. We can use our time and our energy to purify the causes that would result in an unfortunate rebirth for us. In other words, we can purify our negative karma. And Buddhism has a number of methods for doing that. One of these methods is to meditate on the confession section of the 7-limb puja, the 7-limb, our 7-limb prayer. Meditate on the confession section that's in preparing the mind for meditation, which is one of the preliminary topics in our key practices of the past series. From a Buddhist standpoint, a good rebirth is one in which we not only have health, prosperity, and happiness, but one in which we again have the opportunity to encounter the teachings and teachers and to practice the path. So those are the short-term benefits of a precious human life. Then there are long-term or ultimate benefits of having the kind of life we have right now. The ultimate benefits are that we can, with this life we have right now, we are able to attain liberation from cyclic existence and attain complete enlightenment, or at least get pointed in that direction. They're called ultimate benefits because they are liberation from cyclic existence, and then complete enlightenment are that's the final spiritual realization of our potential as a sentient being. Even though we may feel personally far away from it. The teachings say that just having a precious human life is like winning half the battle. And that's like half the battle. That's what they say. So considering that we can accomplish the other half, and there exist methods such as Tantra for attaining enlightenment in this very lifetime without having to go through successive lifetimes, we're very fortunate if we can encounter those teachings, those practices. And this gives us a strong meaning and a purpose in our life to work towards. We can also use our human life to focus on being reborn in what is called a Buddha's pure land, or a Buddha field, which generally speaking is a Buddha's field of influence. Some Buddha fields are considered to be superior places to spiritually train for full Buddhahood, since a Buddha has purified it for this purpose, and since in these realms, one can meet Buddha face to face and study under them. It's sort of like if you were living back when Shakyamuni Buddha was in India, you can actually study with a Buddha if you can get reborn in one of these pure lands. There are different pure lands. Today, the most commonly recognized pure land is called, it's the pure land of Buddha Amitabha, and it's called Sukhavati, which means land of bliss. This is very popular in Asian cultures. Mahayana Buddhists also aspire to be reborn in other pure lands, such as Shambhala, or the Buddha fields of Akshobhya, Medicine Buddha, and Padmasambhava. Shambhala is the, if ever any of you are familiar with the, I think it's James Hilton novel, Shangri-La? Lost Horizon. His Shangri-La was based on stories that he had heard of Shambhala, and Shambhala was a pure land. The way to be reborn in one of these pure lands is to learn about its qualities and advantages, and then you develop a very strong wish to be reborn there. And the causes to be reborn in one of these pure lands are keeping pure morality as usual, good ethical conduct as usual, thinking of loving compassion as usual, remembering the qualities of the particular Buddha and their Buddha field, sort of developing a connection with that Buddha and that Buddha, the Buddha field of that Buddha. And then you dedicate all the positive potential you create from all of your Dharma practices to have that kind of rebirth, to be born in that particular Pure Land. They say, and our teachers said this, Geshe Dragpa said this, I'm sure Geshe Nima would say this, for a good practitioner, a serious good practitioner, a precious human rebirth is better than being born in one of these Pure Lands, because it's said that if you are able to use the tantric methods and you are a good practitioner, you can attain enlightenment much more quickly in a precious human body than you can in a Pure Land, where apparently we don't have the same kind of human body that we have now. The ultimate goal, of course, is enlightenment, and both kinds of these rebirths are advantageous. It just depends on the particular kind of practitioner you are and what motivates you, what gives you enthusiasm to work towards. Then there are, so those are the ultimate benefits of a precious human life. We talked about the short term. Then there are moment-to-moment benefits, and this is really interesting because it's a way that we can immediately pull into practice throughout the day, if we just take the time to do it, to really begin to practice the Dharma throughout the day. We don't have to be sitting down meditating or reading a book or anything like that. We just have to have a few concepts in mind. So we can make our lives meaningful each moment by transforming all of our activities into part of our spiritual practice, all of our daily activities, right? So we can think throughout the day, may everything I think, do, and say be of benefit. So when we sweep the floor or wash the dishes or do the laundry or take a shower, any kind of cleaning, we think that we're cleaning up the negative karma and delusions of ourselves and others with wisdom and compassion. So you'd think, like, if you're in the shower, this water is wisdom and compassion, and it's cleaning up, my negative karma, my delusions, and the same. And I'm thinking that it's, and then I'll be able to help others clean theirs up, right? So that's a way that you just bring the Dharma into a regular activity. Do the dishes, do the laundry, same thing. When we get in the car, and this is easy. Well, I mean, we all get in the car. When we get in the car, we can sit just for a moment and think, I know where I'm going in my life, enlightenment, and I know why I'm going there, for the benefit of all beings. It's a very simple thing to say, but you have you've reminded yourself of this motivation, and you're associating it with when you get in the car. So this has happened to me. Every time I now see my car and I'm walking towards it, these prayers start going off in my head. So it's a way of programming ourselves to use our regular daily activities so that the Dharma becomes part of everything we do. When we're at a red light or stuck in traffic, we can look around at all the other beings and the vehicles around us and on the sidewalk and think, everyone around me wants to be happy and they don't want to suffer just like me. And you know how awful it is to be stuck in traffic, and you know how it is. People are very impatient and everybody's angry, right? So it's like, may they be happy, may they not suffer, right? And then you try to generate loving compassion for them, everybody around you, instead of frustration and anger. And that's huge, to be able to shift, to make that kind of a shift in the way we think and feel by just a simple 10 seconds of a particular thought. That's what the Dharma is. That's what we should be doing with the Dharma in our life. When we start our job in the morning, we think, I'll try to be of benefit to everyone I encounter while I'm working today. When we're finished and we head back to our house or apartment, we think, I want to benefit everybody I see at home and wherever I may be going this evening. So it's these little things that we transform into Dharma practice. When the phone rings, we can take a couple of seconds before we answer and think, may I be of benefit to the person who's on the other end of the line? And then answer and say hello. That is a completely different emotional experience than what I know I normally do. I hear the phone, I go, oh God. And I see the number and it's not anybody I know. And I'm going, this is just somebody trying to get me to buy something. And so if I actually talk to them, I'm not rude, I'm just very abrupt, and no, I'm not interested by. But if you thought differently about this, and you realize, this is another sentient being who wants to be happy on the other end of this line. They probably don't really like the job they're having. You could just be nice to them, and that would make a huge difference, not only to them, but to you. When we enter through the door of a store, grocery store, or an office building, or a house, we think, I'm leading all beings to liberation and enlightenment. And when we go out of the door, think, I'm leading all beings out of cyclic existence. So, I mean, imagine, you're going into Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, right? And you're going through the doors and all these people are going through you. And instead of thinking, what do I need to buy? What do I need? What do I need? What do I need? I'm going to be leading all beings, everybody who's around me. This is my intention, to lead all beings to liberation and enlightenment. I mean, it's a really different way of looking at your shopping experience, And I think it's pretty beneficial. When we go upstairs or go up in an elevator, think, I'm leading myself and others up to higher states of being and developing realizations. When we go downstairs or down in an elevator, think, I'm going into all the suffering places in this world out of compassion to really be of benefit to all others. So, Tracy saving the insect, even though the door blew open, I mean, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. That's a sentient being who doesn't want to die, So these, when we remind ourselves of these things, it can become a really powerful form of positive programming for our mind, which in turn will transform how we speak and behave, because everything starts with the thought. It starts with our mind, and everything we say and the mind is the thing that's getting enlightenment. There's always some kind of form that goes with consciousness, like, there's a Buddha body and stuff like that, but it's the mind that's making the transformation. So this is powerful, positive programming, and it only takes about 15 seconds to do each time, but the difference it makes can be huge. All we have to do is practice, So that's a really not a difficult practice to do, and we can bring it into our life. So then we need to talk about the rarity of a precious human life and the difficulty of creating the causes for it. It's important for us to grasp just how rare it is to have the kind of life we have right now, so that we get a sense of how meaningful and special it really is. It's difficult to create the causes for it because it's difficult to act ethically. Ethics, that's what the causes for precious human life are. Ethics, having good ethics. All we have to do is look at the world around us to see the frequency and intensity of unethical actions as opposed to ethical ones, and we begin to see how difficult it is to keep good ethical conduct. Killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct abound. We hear manipulative lies, divisive and derogatory speech, and meaningless drivel on a daily basis just on TV alone. Corporate and political greed and deceit with the intention of causing harm to many for the benefit of a few is blatantly evident upon a little bit of investigation, and wrong views are held as being correct and true. In this kind of environment that we're very well aware of, is it easy or difficult to be generous and patient or maintain ethical discipline? How about being enthusiastic, having a joyous effort that takes delight in doing constructive, virtuous actions? How much delight do we have? How much drudgery do we have? How much time do we spend each day cultivating our concentration and wisdom? How much of our positive potential do we dedicate to the enlightenment of all sentient beings? These are all causes for having a precious human rebirth. And we got one, we had one, which means we did some of these things in the past. We really ought to rejoice about that and not get, I mean, we all have a tendency We do. We have a tendency to get down on ourselves because we really focus what's wrong with us instead of, taking the time to look, wow, I must have done something really right to be able to be in the position I'm in right now. And we should just not be proud about it, but rejoice that this has happened for us. So what's our habitual behavior right now? We need to look at what is our habitual behavior right now. What actions do we do very well and which ones don't we do? It's difficult to create the causes for a precious human rebirth. The life we personally have now is really a miracle if you think about it. So we really, let's use it wisely. We have the potential to become a Buddha. Why waste that? Let's put our energy into creating the causes for another precious human rebirth and enlightenment. Then they give, there's a story that they use for an analogy about how rare the kind of life we have is and how difficult it is to acquire it. And this is in the Buddhist scriptures. And there's this story about a sea tortoise, and it serves as an analogy for the rarity of our life, precious human life. So there's this blind tortoise in a huge, vast ocean. And the tortoise is usually at the bottom of the ocean, but comes up to the surface every 100 years. And on the surface of the ocean, there's this golden yolk with one hole, sort of like a ring-shaped golden lifesaver, floating on the ocean, being blown around by the wind. What are the odds that a blind tortoise, who only comes to the surface of the ocean every 100 years, will stick its head through the hole in the golden yolk? Pretty slim, considering how vast the ocean is. Sometimes the tortoise surface is thousands of miles away, sometimes maybe only a foot away, but it still doesn't matter because the tortoise has missed it and will have to wait for another 100 years to try again. So the way this analogy relates is this: the ocean is the ocean of cyclic existence. The blind tortoise is us, blinded by our ignorance. Being at the bottom of the ocean is like being born in all the unfortunate realms where it's very difficult and there's a lot of confusion and darkness. Coming up once every 100 years is like acquiring a good rebirth, not necessarily a precious human rebirth, but any kind of human rebirth or being reborn as something like a god or a demigod. We're only up there for a brief time and then we go back down again. The golden yoke, the golden lifesaver, is the Buddha's teachings, the Dharma. It's floating around in cyclic existence, going from place to place as if it's being blown by the wind. And if you look at the Dharma, it's gone from India to Sri Lanka, from Thailand to China, from Tibet to the West, and all over the place. It's never stationary. The golden yoke, the Buddha's Dharma, keeps changing places. Because we're blinded by our ignorance and misconceptions, we're usually in the unfortunate realms and come up to the surface once in a great while. To be able to put our head through the hole of the golden lifesaver is like getting a precious human life and meeting with the Buddha's teachings. If we think about this analogy, we can get a sense of how precious this opportunity we have is, and a feeling of how important it is to use it and use it wisely. And then they talk about the difficulty in acquiring this kind of rebirth that we have, just in terms of its nature and the numbers. To see if it's rare or not to have a human life that's precious in nature, we look at the number of beings that have precious human lives. So there are approximately 7.9 billion humans living on the earth right now. But how many of them have precious human lives in terms of these 8 freedoms and these 10 endowments? If you compare the number of human beings in general to the number of land animals, marine animals, and insects, it's pretty astounding. Hundreds of millions of flies can fit into a space that won't hold 10 humans. The number of animals and insects living in a typical suburban neighborhood compared to the humans living there is mind-boggling. It's said there are fewer hungry ghosts than there are hell beings. There are still fewer animals, and fewer land animals than marine animals. When we start to look at the numbers of beings in the upper realms versus the number in the lower realms, the number of animals versus the number of human beings, the number of human beings versus the number of those who have precious human lives, we see that this is a very really value. And there's a story in the scriptures. There's one time the Buddha bent down and scooped up a little piece of dust on his fingernail. And he said, the number of beings who have an upper rebirth, and we're not even talking about a precious human, is like the dust on my fingernail. And the number of beings who have unfortunate rebirths is like all the dust in the whole world. When we think about this, it starts to sink in that the opportunity that we have right now is very rare and very difficult to get. And we begin to feel like we really must choose it wisely. We must pull ourselves together and not waste the opportunity we have. So this brings us now to the second meditation topic in the initial scope of the Lam Rim, impermanence, death, and Dharma. And this is designed to further put the fire under our butt, to not waste our time here, to make sure. I mean, it's really I can't say that they're trying to scare us. They're trying to encourage us to see the direction we really should be going in right now. So Lama Tsongkhapa calls this topic mindfulness of death. Bangka Rinpoche gives it the title remembering death. It's very often called death and impermanence. According to Tsongkhapa, one of the errors that keeps us from taking full advantage of our precious human life is that we misconceive the impermanence of our life as if it was permanent. We continually have the thought, I will not die today. Everyone has the idea that death will come later. However, with each passing day, we think, I will not die today. I will not die today. And we cling to this thought until the very moment of our death. Finally, on the day of our death, we will have died on a day that we called today. So if we keep saying, I will not die today, I will not die today, as long as we have this attitude, we continually think only of how to achieve happiness and avoid suffering in this life. We think, I need this and I need that. And we don't practice the Dharma because we don't think about things of great importance like liberation from cyclic existence and achieving enlightenment. We're still not even sure we really believe it, you know? So although we may reflect and meditate on the Dharma, it will only be for the sake of this life. And whatever positive potential we generate won't have lasting power. With this Lam Rim topic, we begin by talking about the disadvantages of not thinking about death and the advantages of thinking about it. Our usual reaction is the thing that we least want to talk about or think about in our lives, and yet it is the one thing that we definitely are going to do. The one certain thing that all of us have to go through and experience is the thing we least want to face. We don't want to face the reality. So we make death fearful by refusing to think about it. But it's still going to happen, whether we think about it or we don't think about it. The Dharma approach to death is face it honestly. Instead of letting the fear of death stay in the dark where it frightens us, we turn the light on and look at it for what it is. It puts us in touch with reality and energizes our Dharma practice. Remembering death gives us a framework with which we can look at our life, appreciate it, and take full advantage of the opportunities that we have. When we remember our own mortality, it helps us to see what's important in our life and what isn't important. This is helpful when we're confused and anxious about some situation that has arisen and we don't know what to do about it. If we think, at the time I'm dying and I'm leaving this life, moving toward whatever my next rebirth might be, as I look back at this situation that I'm so anxious and confused about, what would have been the best thing for me to do? That's a very different way to think about it than our normal fear or anger or the things that come up. Think, you know, if I was dead looking back on this situation that I'm right now, what would I think would have been the best thing to do? So we spend some time to really review the situation, this current situation we're anxious about in our mind, from the framework of remembering our death. The solution that comes to us will be clear, grounded, courageous, and far less emotionally charged than if we had gone to our normal knee-jerk reaction. I mean, it may not, the solution still may be difficult, but it will be clear, you know? So another situation, if we're really angry at someone or something, we can think, when I'm dying and looking back on this, do I want to be thinking about how angry I was at this person or this thing? Is it really going to be so important to me at the time of my death? Why put so much emotional energy into this if when I die, it's not going to have any relevance to me? Or if we find ourselves worrying too much about something, you know, perseverating over something, we can think at the time of death, is all this worry going to do me any good? No, I don't need this worry. I don't need to be so concerned about this. When we think about our life, perspective of death, all of the little things that make us fret and worry and get anxious don't matter in the same way. Our mind automatically becomes more centered. You could even say almost more peaceful. This is one of the ways we can use death to improve the quality of our life. This is the reason why the Buddha talked about death and impermanence. So now we're going to go into the 6 disadvantages of not remembering death. The first one is, if we don't think about death, we won't remember the Dharma. Sort of like, if we don't think about death, we're not really going to be thinking about the Dharma. If we don't remember death, we'll think only about this life and get caught up in its many demands and activities, foods, clothes, acquiring stuff, making money, building up our career, having kids, building up our reputation, watching TV, surfing the net, going to concerts and parties, traveling, and on and on and on. When we don't remember our own death and the impermanence of our life, we'll forget about the Dharma. Who needs the Dharma? This is how most of our society lives. Nobody wants to think about death unless it's in our face. It's almost like we pretend it doesn't exist. The whole purpose of life becomes having as much pleasure as we can for as long as we can. And we run from one pleasure to another in our attempts to be happy. In terms of our spiritual life, when we don't think about death, we don't think about the Dharma. Shallow. We can see from the results, we can see from the way we're practicing that we're not actually really thinking about the Dharma the way we should be. So what happens is we can't get ourselves to sit down and meditate, or we feel like our Dharma practice isn't going well. One of the reasons for this is that we don't think about our impermanence and the fact that we're going to leave this life, and we don't really know when we're going to leave it. Without properly thinking about that fact, we don't think about the necessity of the Dharma. And if we don't think the Dharma is necessary, what motivation is there for us to practice it? So it's very closely related to this idea of remembering that death is going to happen. And we don't know when it's going to happen. And so the Dharma is actually quite necessary to practice like immediately. All right. That's what we do. You know, I mean, that's what Venerable Rabina says. She says, the day we die is a day that we will call today, you know, and we keep saying, I'm not going to die today. I'm not going to die today. So here's that's the first disadvantage of not remembering death. Here's the second one. Even if we remember the Dharma, like, you know, I would say we remember the Dharma, right? Even if we remember the Dharma, we won't practice it. So eventually going to come. And we keep thinking, but I will not die today, I will not die today. We grasp onto the idea that we're not going to die today. And we think, oh, I can practice the Dharma next year or the year after. I've got really too much to do right now. I've got to get to my career, my family, everything else going on, renovations in the house, blah, 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 blah. When I have less to do, then I can really. So we're forever procrastinating. We don't feel any urgency about our practice. In the meantime, while we are not practicing Dharma, our human life is day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute running out. Once our life ends, like water under the bridge, it's no more, and we will have lost our opportunity to practice in this precious human life that we remember the Dharma, we won't practice it. Here's the third disadvantage of not remembering death. Even if we practice, which, you know, some of us do, even if we practice, we won't practice properly. This is a huge, huge point. And we're going to get into this in a lot more depth after I go through all the advantages of not remembering death. So even if we do practice, we're not going to do it purely because our mind is concerned with worldly things. These concerns are known as the 8 worldly concerns or the 8 worldly dharmas. So we'll get into a lot more detail about that. But we're not practicing properly because we're not remembering death properly, and we're sort of motivated by our worldly concerns. All right, here's the fourth disadvantage of not remembering death. Even if we remember the Dharma, we won't practice it consistently. So even if we remember the Dharma, if we don't remember death, and that means thinking about it every day, we'll lose the determination to practice it, to practice the Dharma with conviction all the time. Our practice will lack intensity, it will lack strength, it will lack consistency. This explains why, and this happens to everybody, well, we'll practice for a while and then lose interest. Or we'll go to, a teacher shows up and we'll go to lots of Dharma classes and we'll get all revved up because we were so impressed with what the teacher taught. And then we'll go back and practice a couple of times and then sort of it just withers away.
No.
When we come back to it and we lose our interest again. So we're on again, off again. Because we're not thinking about death regularly, I shouldn't say all the time, but regularly, we don't practice every day. Even if we do sit down to practice, there's not much depth to it. When we say our prayers, sometimes we start saying them as if we've got to say them and we just have to get them done like we're doing it by rote. Our practice, our prayers, they're lacking conviction. And it's lacking consistency because we haven't been thinking seriously enough about our own mortality. We don't have the intensity and interest that thinking about our death will give to our practice. It's really interesting. And I've been trying this a little because I've been obviously studying this to present this for this session. And I'm finding that thinking about death is not fearful, that it is motivating, that it is sort of, my mind feels like it's getting back into line somehow, you know? So here we go. Here's the fifth disadvantage of the six ones. By not remembering death, what happens is we get involved in a lot of negative actions. Another disadvantage of not remembering death is that our craving for things of this life increases. And in order to get them, we help some people and we harm others. We develop attachment, hostility, and ignorance. We fight and argue with people. We don't think of the long-term consequences of our actions. If it's convenient to lie, we lie because we're not thinking about death. We're not thinking about karma. We're not thinking about the problems that our negative actions can bring us in the future. And as we get more involved in negative actions, our mind becomes more obscured, it gets harder to practice, and we get more confused. And it turns into a vicious kind of downward spiral. And this happens all the time. And then the sixth disadvantage, at the time of death, we'll die with regrets. When we reach the time of death, if we haven't been thinking about death all along, we have a lot of regret. When we're dying, we look back on our life and we ask ourselves, what have I done? How has my life been meaningful? We'll see that our possessions, all the things we've yearned for and given so much of our attention to in the past, are of no benefit whatever. We'll see that we've spent our life trying to make people think we're important, trying to build ourselves up so we can believe we're worthwhile. We've lied to get more money. We've lied to cover up all the devious things we've done. We've spent our life getting angry at people, holding grudges, and even not talking to some people for years and years. We'll know that we haven't made the Dharma part of our mind stream, something that surely would have been of help to us. We'll know that at the time of our death. We won't know how to relax our mind and make our death a peaceful one. If we remember death, our mind stays very clear. If we remember death, we'll remember that it might come on any day, at any time. This will make us want to get our emotional life in order. We won't want to have relationships with hard feelings and grudges. We won't want to have remorse and regret and guilt. By maintaining an awareness of death, we can clean up a lot of the emotional baggage we've been living with for decades that just leads to confusion at the time of our death. It will also, the benefit is, it will also make our lives more peaceful right now. So those are the 6 disadvantages. And now let's go back to the third one, and we'll elaborate on this third disadvantage, that our practice gets mixed up with worldly concerns. So issues involving things like reputation, competition, jealousy, attachment, anger, they can all get mixed in with our Dharma practice. Because we aren't thinking about death and our own mortality, we lose the purity of our practice. Specifically, there are 8 worldly concerns, also known as the 8 worldly dharmas, that can really distract us from our practice. These 8 worldly concerns are like they're right at the line in the sand that makes a distinction between what is a worldly action and what is a Dharma action. Okay, this is a really important point, and it's really easy to miss it. Dharma action is not saying prayers and looking holy and making numerous prostrations in front of a big, beautiful Buddha statue on a big, beautiful altar. Dharma action is what our mind is doing, whether our mind is free of these 8 worldly concerns or not. There's a story, I remember Venerable Thubten Chodron tells it, but I remember either Geshe Drapo or Lama Pasang told this story. It's a story that the Tibetan teachers tell regarding this. The Tibetans have a lot of stupas and relic monuments. If you go to Dharamsala in India, you'll see a lot of folks going for their daily walks around these relic monuments, and they've got malas and they're chanting Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. And then they'll, stop and talk with one another for a while and, shoot the breeze. And then they'll, start circumambulating again and Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om. And then they'll talk a little bit more and then they'll chant a few more Om Mani Padme Oms. It's very common to see it. So the story is there was one man who decided that he was going to practice the Dharma. So he started doing circumambulating. He started doing circumambulations around one of these stupas. His teacher came by and said, "It's very good you're circumambulating the stupa, but it would be better if you practice the Dharma." So the man said to himself, "I'll prostrate to the stupa." So the next day he's out there prostrating up and down, and over, he's perspiring profusely. His teacher comes by and says, "It's very good you're prostrating, but it would be better if you practice the Dharma." So the man thinks, okay, I'll try something else. The next day he's back out there again, this time reading a Dharma text out loud and thinking, now I'm doing something holy. Again, his teacher comes by and says, "It's very good you're reading the sutras, but it would be better if you practice the Dharma." And by this time, the guy is really puzzled. Am I not practicing the Dharma? I was circumambulating, I was prostrating, I'm reading the Buddha's words. What do you mean by practice the Dharma? And his teacher said, transform your mind. In other words, it's not the external things one does that determines whether one is practicing the Dharma. It's the mind, the mental state that's doing the external things that determines whether one is practicing the Dharma. We can never judge whether an action is Dharma or not Dharma from the action itself. We have to look at the mind that's doing it. We have to look at our mind when we're practicing the Dharma. This is why Buddhism emphasizes our motivation over and over again. That's how we cut out all the hypocrisy. If we're not mindful of our motivation and we think being religious means doing all these pious looking external things, then we've really lost the plot. We may be doing something that looks great externally, but if we have the same old mind, we're still not transforming. This is a really, really important point, and to always be aware of it and question ourselves. Why am I practicing? Why am I doing this? Is it so I can get recognition from my fellow Dharma practitioners, or praise from my teachers, or even approval from the Buddha? We bring a lot of our old behavior patterns into the Dharma. If we're not aware of our motivation, it all comes up. We always need to ask ourselves, what is it I'm really seeking to get from what I'm doing? That's what differentiates a Dharma action from a worldly action. A worldly action is one that is motivated by concern for the happiness of this life. My happiness now, my pleasure now, this life's happiness. That's a worldly motivation. While there's nothing particularly wrong with this kind of motivation, it doesn't rise to the level of altruism that a human being is capable of, and that makes the attainment of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings possible. So here are the 8 worldly concerns. The 8 worldly concerns are ways in which the attachment to the happiness of this life manifests. It's a framework with which we can evaluate our own motivations and see if any of these 8 worldly concerns are involved in them. There are 4 pairs of these concerns, and each pair involves an attachment and an aversion to a specific thing. So here they are. 1, attachment to having material things and aversion to not having material things. 2, attachment to praise and aversion to blame. 3, attachment to having a good reputation and aversion to having a bad one. And 4, attachment to pleasant sensations, and aversion to unpleasant sensations. And as we go through these, you try to think within the framework of these questions, which one of these do I have? Are there advantages? Are there disadvantages? What are the disadvantages and what can I do about them? So here's the first one: attachment to having material things and aversion to not having material things. We like to possess stuff. We want material things: clothes, cars, shoes, houses, boats, vacations, diplomas, degrees, money, you name it, and we can probably be attached to it. The material thing, the material things in and of themselves are not the problem. There is nothing wrong with having material things. The problem is the mind that is attached to them and clings to them and says, I have got to have these things to be happy. I've got to have these things to consider myself worthwhile or consider myself successful. Or I've got to have these things to be able to face the world and present myself to the world. Or I've got to have these things just to feel happy. We always want more. We always want better. Our whole economy is built around this first worldly Dharma. Advertising encourages it. We're encouraged to want and to crave and to need and to get attached to things. We all have different things we're attached to. Our minds can get attached to anything and everything. Give it the opportunity and it will stick to something. The other worldly concern in this first pair is aversion to not having material things. We're encouraged to be miserly. We don't want to give our things away or share them with others because we don't want to be separated from our stuff. Look how hard it can be for us to just give things away or throw things out. We feel like we're losing something. We're going through a lot of that right here in this household. We're trying to throw, and it's not all that easy. Some of the stuff is really easy to throw out, and other stuff there's this sentimental attachment, but there's really no use for it. There's no place for it. Not only are we doing this, but my nephew and his wife upstairs are doing it. So it's like a theme that's going on right now. How do we get rid of our stuff? Well, even to give money away to a charity, sometimes we feel if we give it away, we won't have it. We also have aversion to not getting things like a card or a gift on our birthday or our anniversary, or we don't get a raise, we don't get the extra money we want, or like in our current situation, the economy goes bad and our money isn't worth as much. I mean, in 1929, when the stock market crashed, people killed themselves because of it. I mean, that's the attachment is so great. It's all because of this clinging to material things and aversion to not having them. Then the attachment, we may think, well, this is because of our culture, but this attachment and aversion is not due to our culture. The Buddha gave these teachings over 2,500 years ago in ancient India. So it's not just our society. Our society definitely develops and aggravates this tendency. It even exploits it. But this concern, this worldly concern, is there in all societies because it's in the mind. Our attachment to having material things and aversion to not having material things creates confusion in our lives. Again, the problem is not with the material things. The $100 bill is not the problem. Our attachment to it is the problem. Our state of mind is reflected in how we relate to material things. If we have a lot of things and we can't let go of them, we have a lot of attachment. If we have a lot of things and we can easily give them away, then there's nothing wrong with having a lot of things because there's no attachment in our mind. The idea is not that we have to give everything away and become like ascetics. On the other hand, there are things that give us a lot of problems because we're so attached to them. All of these sentimental things, like I was talking about, all the little knickknacks and the family heirlooms. We can be attached to any kind of junk we want to. The mind of clinging and attachment is what the difficulty is. We often give gifts to other people with an impure motivation. For example, giving someone a gift, giving you a gift so you'll like me, or giving you a gift so that every time you use it, you'll think of me and you'll think well of me. I'm giving this so you'll think how generous I am. Whenever you give, oh, this is a big one. This happens a lot. Whenever you give a gift, say to your spiritual teacher, your guru, you have to be really mindful about why you're giving it. It's a challenge to give your guru a gift with pure motivation. With a lot of gurus, almost everything they get, they turn right around and give it away. I remember we had bought some maroon zip-up sweatshirts for Lama Pasang and Geshe Drakpa when they were both teaching at Bao Kwang Temple years ago. And it was wintertime, and we thought they could use them for warmth. So I think Kavita gave one to Lama Pasang, and I went to give one to Geshe Drakpa. And Geshe Drakpa says, no, I don't want that. I don't need that. And I'm going, well, okay, we just thought maybe you could use it because it'll keep you warm. And then Geshe Drakpa says, okay, I'll take it. So, I mean, right off the bat, I was going to give him something. He was going to say, no. But when he realized that I wasn't giving it to him so he would think better of me, it's cold out now, maybe you'll use it. He went, okay, I'll take it. It's kind of interesting, We often give gifts to other people with these impure motivations, So what happens is, if our motivation is impure, right, and we give somebody something and they give it away, we can get very offended, as if they don't value us because they gave the thing we gave them away. If we really have given it, it no longer belongs to us. It belongs to the other person. They can do whatever they want with it. So we really have to check our motivation for giving. Here's the next one. Attachment to praise and aversion to blame. This is one of the biggest. This is one of the biggest. This is the mind that loves to hear ourselves getting complimented. You look so good. You look so nice. You have such a good figure. You're so handsome. You're so beautiful. You're so talented. You're so sensitive. You're so kind. You're so brilliant. You're so creative. Whatever it is that we want to be identified with, we love it when other people acknowledge it. We feed off the nice words about ourselves. If we don't get enough praise, we can even manipulate things in certain ways to make sure we get the little kind of praise we want to hear. For instance, we might say something like, I really messed up on that job today, hoping that the other person is going to take it as a hint and say, oh no, you did a really good job. Or people will say, oh, I look really horrible today. And, the idea is you're supposed to compliment them. Or if we're close to someone and they don't praise us enough, we can get angry. And here's the really big one. Conversely, we have this really strong phobia about any kind of criticism. When people tell us about our mistakes, even if the mistake is one that we actually made, we get mad at them. Even if we made the mistake, we think the other person is bad and wrong because they saw it. We get angry at them. Or we get angry at people because they mistakenly thought we made a mistake. We're that sensitive. We don't want to hear one slight word that might indicate that we're not the picture of perfection. You can see the problems we get into because of our attachment to praise and aversion to blame. Somebody criticizes us, then we get angry and we speak harshly back to them. Or we'll try to divide their relationship with somebody else. We'll badmouth them to somebody else to kind of split them up. Or we make some lies even just to get even at this person who harmed us. I think we probably have all seen this happen if we've not done it ourselves. We gossip for hours about all these horrible people who don't see how wonderful we are. We get very confused, and then we create a lot of negative karma because of this very strong attachment to praise and aversion to blame. If we don't know how to evaluate ourselves with a clear mind and see what our good qualities are and what we need to improve on, then we usually go through our life with a feeling of, I'm not very worthwhile. I have low esteem. Because we don't believe in ourselves, because we can't look at our own behavior and our own mind and recognize what our own talents are, we need other people's praises and kind words to build up our confidence. We need other people to tell us what those things are. We think that if other people tell us we have those qualities, then we must have them and we must be worthwhile people. Conversely, if they tell us that we've bungled something up, that we're awful, then we must really be awful. We completely believe what other people say about us. That's why we get so mad when they tell us unpleasant things. If we didn't really believe what they said about us, why would we get mad at them? If we had the ability to evaluate ourselves correctly, then why get mad if somebody else sees a fault that we already know we have it. We know we have the fault. We know what's wrong. We admit we have it. Everybody else sees it. It's like somebody telling you have a nose on your face. It's there. Everybody sees it. Yes, I made that mistake. Why get so mad when other people say it? We get so mad because we don't do that kind of internal evaluation to look at our own weaknesses and to look at our own strengths. Similarly, if somebody blames us for something we didn't even do, or they exaggerate what we did, we get upset and belligerent. Why be upset if we didn't do it? Again, if we were able to look at ourselves and we knew our own reality, if somebody's accusing us of something that isn't our problem, then why be upset about it? We get upset only because we're attached to what other people say. We're attached to what they think. It's huge. It's only because we're out of touch with ourselves that we completely give all this power to other people's words. So as an antidote to the attachment to praise and aversion to blame, at the end of the day, every day, look and see what went well and what needs to be improved. We look at our own lives in a very honest way, without being overly critical, without being overly judgmental, and without being proud or arrogant either. Just look and see, what went well today, what did I do well, and feel happy about it. Not proud, but rejoice and acknowledge that the quality is there. And when we've messed up, acknowledge it. It's not so bad. It's not such a catastrophe. It can be purified. It can be amended in some way. We blow some of our problems so far out of proportion that it's like this catastrophe, end of the world kind of thing, And when we do that, if we can see that it's not a catastrophe, if we can amend it in some way, then we're not going to give the power of our self-respect and self-confidence to other people. We're going to retain it for ourselves because we'll be able to look at ourselves accurately. That would solve a whole lot of problems. If we constantly rely on what other people say about us and think it's true, we're going to get really and awfully confused. But if we can look at ourselves, then if somebody comes along and tells us we made this mistake, we can check up and say, you're right, I did. Thank you for pointing that out. And we don't feel like we're losing any of our ego territory because we admit our mistakes. So what if we made a mistake? As long as we have Buddha nature, underneath we have this very firm foundation for confidence. So what's wrong about admitting mistakes? This is basically how we learn. It's how we grow from our mistakes. This is something each of us really should do some in-depth meditation on, because it's such a problem. And we need to do it repeatedly, because this worldly concern of praise and blame is a really deep-rooted one. So here's the next worldly concern: attachment to having a good reputation and aversion to having a bad one. The next pair of worldly concerns is attachment. It's a little different than praise and blame. It's different. Praise and blame refer to the nice, ego-pleasing, pleasant words that are said directly to us. Reputation refers to the opinion that a large group of people out there have of us. For example, whatever field of work we're in, we want everybody in our particular field to think we're good at what we do, to have a good opinion of us. We want to be known as competent, reliable, talented, and marvelous. You know, whatever it is, our career, our hobbies, we're all attached to having a good reputation in that field. One person wants to have a reputation as a good guitar player, another a good skier, another good mechanic. It doesn't matter. You know, this attachment to reputation is still there. Again, the problem isn't in the reputation, it's with our attachment to the reputation. There's nothing wrong with a good reputation. It's our attachment to the reputation. We want everybody in that big group out there to know how good we are. We want to have a good reputation in our family. We want the family to know that we're successful. We want to prove ourselves to the family. We can also have an attachment like this in a Dharma group. We want everybody in the group to think we're wonderful. Conversely, when we hear that a bunch of people are talking behind our backs and spreading bad rumors about us, we go completely berserk. My reputation, they're all criticizing me. Nobody will respect me. Nobody will listen to me. Nobody will come to my business. What's going to happen to me? You can see the kind of turmoil that attachment to reputation creates in our life. It also explains why, oh gosh, I'm sure we've all seen this. It also explains why when you go into a room, you know, we have a very difficult time listening to other people because we're too busy presenting them with the image that we want them to have of us. I know I've done this, and I know I've seen other people do it with me. We have this image that we want to create in the public eye. When we go to meet strangers, you know, we pull out our business card and say, I'm the director of this, I'm the chairperson of this, I'm on this particular board, you know, blah, blah, blah. All of these, you know, and I have these other kinds of hobbies that you might want to know about. Especially when we meet new people, it's almost as if like we try and package ourselves and sell ourselves to them. Here's my personality. Here's how you're supposed to think of me. Don't you like me? You know, we're very attached to this kind of reputation. And I mean, I've also seen this too. This has happened to me. If the person, you know, is completely blasé, which I was being completely blasé about somebody. If the person's completely blasé about all of, you know, our great qualities, we feel very offended. If they cut us off or are bored by, you know, our presentation of ourselves, we get offended. And we're completely then uninterested in what they have to say. We can't listen to them. We're too busy creating our own good reputation. And I've seen it happen. So that's one to be aware of. That is attachment to having a good reputation and aversion to having a bad one. Then we have attachment to pleasant sensations and aversion to unpleasant sensations. This is the last set of worldly concerns. And this is attachment to any kind of pleasure that comes to us through our senses. For example, with the eye sense, we always want to see things that we think are beautiful things. We want to have beautiful paintings in our house, or things that we think are beautiful paintings in our house. We want to have a beautiful house. When we go on vacation, we want to stay in a beautiful place. We want to have clothes that are attractive. We want to have a car that's really cool looking and is a really beautiful color. We don't want to see things that we think are ugly things. We get very upset when we have to see the things that we think are ugly things. So we spend all of our time trying to see beautiful things and avoid all the ugly things that we don't want to see. We're also attached to sounds that come to us via our ear sense. We make up all kinds of things about the sounds that come to us through our ear sense. We want to hear what we think is beautiful music. We want to hear lots of beautiful music, beautiful sounds, anything that is beautiful to our ear. We don't want to hear anything awful to our ear, like screeching brakes or nails on a chalkboard or whatever, whatever TV news we love to hate. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear the sound, even the sound of the music that comes on the when it starts, or the voice of the particular anchor person. It's like, I hate that person, right? I mean, we all do this. Then we have smells. We want to smell beautiful things with our nose sense. Fragrant flowers, good food, whatever it is we want to smell. We don't want to smell the bad things. When we have bad things, we have sprays and air purifiers we use to get rid of the bad smells. We want to also have nice tastes coming in through our tongue sense. We're really attached to food. This one is a really big one. I mean, I'm sure we've all noticed how much time all of us can spend talking about food. This is really indicative of the amount of attachment we have for food. We talk about all the good places where you can go and eat. We talk about good recipes, what we ate at a certain restaurant. We talk about what we want to eat. We go out to a restaurant. Probably you've all seen this too. We spend half an hour discussing everything on the menu so as to ensure we pick the very best thing from the whole menu, right? And then of course, when it comes, it isn't as good as we want, or it isn't as good as somebody who we're with. They don't want it that way. And either we get very upset or they get very upset and they go, excuse me, waiter, could you please come here? And then, you're talking kind of in a loud voice and everybody in the restaurant or people all around you can hear you and they may be even staring. And, you say, this is overcooked. This is not what it's supposed to be. We get very offensive and we go, take it back, make me another one. So we're really attached to food all the time. We eat and then we want to go have ice cream and chocolate or whatever it is that we're attached to in that regard, the sweet stuff. So we have a lot of aversion to eating bad things. We always want to eat the good things. And then the last sense consciousness is the tactile touch consciousness. And we want to feel nice, soft things with our tactile body sense. Or we want to have beautiful things to touch, or we want to be warm enough. We don't want to be cold, but we want to be cool enough. We don't want to be hot. So much time is spent just to make sure that our body experiences everything that is most wonderful for us. So we enjoy ourselves in a hot tub or that swimming pool. We spend our precious human life that we can use to attain liberation and enlightenment running after all of these sense pleasures. We know we do it.
Social media is
Ugh, God.
is the playhouse.
Yeah, it's sort of like an eight-worldly Dharma bear pit or a trap,
What did Kavita say? I couldn't hear her.
Oh, maybe, yeah, I'll mute my, let me find it.
Do you know how to mute yourself?
Yeah, I have to find myself. I have to find myself. Okay.
You have to find yourself. You're muted. What I was saying was that social media is like the playground of the eight-worldly dharmas. If you think, how much people are posting their trips, their food, their family, all the nice things, boosting up their reputation, basically. And I'm sure you've all heard this by now and read it when you read about the eight-worldly dharmas in any of the texts that we study. They emphasize always that the attachment to a good reputation is the last one to go. It seems to be the most difficult, even more than like pain, physical pain or, the others. And that's kind of interesting to think about. So, the most pernicious of the eight worldly dharmas, attachment to good reputation, is fed by, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. What's that video one that's hot right now? I can't. TikTok, yeah. I mean, people are, showing how smart they are, or how talented they are, or how insightful they are or how well traveled they are, where are they now? Where's Waldo? All that
Well,
stuff. I
right.
mean,
And it's, and not of it, and yeah, in that very moment, that's what they're doing, that's where they are.
Tracy,
But
turn yourself up.
okay, I don't, it's Brian's lap or iPad. Did you turn it
Oh.
up? Okay, there we go. So we got to turn it up. So yeah, in that moment, but the reality sometimes is it's only that brief moment that they're that happy. The rest of their reality is they're depressed. They're stuck at
Yeah.
home like the rest of us.
Somebody just said that to me. I said, who did I see? Anyways, somebody that I don't see often. I said, well, it looks like your life is going really great from the little bit of Facebook posts I see. And they said, well, I only post the good things,
Well, right, and that's the
And
thing.
why is that? They're
Right, and like Christopher was saying earlier, with regards to our own mistakes and our own errors, if we can own all of who we are, the good and the bad. Why don't we post on Instagram and Facebook? I
that
had a
would
really
be a fun
shitty,
exercise.
I had a shitty day today. Nothing went right. Blah 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 blah.
I love it. Let's do that. For 30 days, we'll just post real crap.
Shitstorm.
Today, I worried endlessly, bit my fingernails, and gnawed, and because Tashi's constipated, and I'm not sure what the vet gave him this
But
thing.
again,
It's not working.
as a Buddhist, you can't have bad or good days.
Oh really? Yeah, they're all neutral.
They're all
They're just
neutral.
a day.
And by
It's
the
just a
way,
day.
I just sent you a day or two ago, the TikTok channel for Venerable Rabina. And so she's on TikTok, obviously spreading the philosophy, but she's using TikTok to reach
Wonderful.
more people.
Well, right. I mean, they're like in everything. It's a balance. There's good and not
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
I mean,
But no, you're totally right. It's for the most part, it's ego grasping, self boosting, their own image, their own self value, their own self worth, because probably something inside of them, psychology base wise, is they don't feel enough, and they're trying to get something from that external source versus internally.
this reminds me of something, and this applies to me and all of us, but if I say social media is the playground of the Eightfold Dharmas, it's not the same as saying it's only that. Because
Exactly.
as Brian pointed out, how did I ever first hear of Venerable Robina? Was YouTube, which was one of the earliest social media things out there. So I'm just using myself as an example. It's not only that. How do I count the ways of helpful stuff. So I didn't mean to say that it's only bad, and I didn't say that. And I think that's the other thing is, I'm really learning about my speech.
That's all we can do is be
It
mindful
really
of
sucks.
our bodies.
Very sloppy.
Well, but we all have those days where we're not as mindful as we were maybe the day before or a future day coming. And so all we can do is be the best that we can be at any given moment and try to achieve more, try to be that better being. That's all we can do. And not to be so down on ourselves when we don't accomplish that in a particular moment in time. Or set off alarms when you're saving bugs.
It's like that, yeah.
It would be interesting if we could, if we started a get real movement on social media so that, there was a real balanced mix of information coming from people, because there's a lot of anger and hatred and things getting spewed out there, plus the typical things like you were talking about, like you see on, say, Facebook, where I went, I ate, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It would be nice if, it could be just more balanced somehow, because it is valuable. Social media is valuable. All of these things, what we're doing right now is a valuable thing. So But like Geshe-Drakpa said, it's samsara. What do you expect? I mean, we've got these worldly concerns, and so they really get triggered.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how we need to finish up here. So so the disadvantages of these 8 worldly concerns, one of the chief disadvantages of them is that we can totally waste our time. By using this life to get in touch with our Buddha potential, and make it grow, that's something that we could really be doing now with this precious human life. We can use it to develop our internal peace, our loving kindness, openness, receptivity, compassion. Instead of using our time to develop these qualities, so often we use it to get material things. We use it to make sure that we're getting enough praise or protecting our reputation, or looking for nice things to eat, to see, or to hear. And we can really waste our time. In addition, by seeking all of these things that we like or running away from the things that we don't like, we generate a lot of negative karma. If you look at the reasons for doing the 10 non-virtuous actions, the killing, lying, stealing, all that stuff, they all relate to these 8 worldly concerns. Why do we steal things? Because of attachment to material stuff, or attachment to reputation. Why is there unwise sexual behavior? Attachment to tactile sensation, or attachment to reputation, or attachment to praise, right? Why do we speak harsh words? Because somebody offended our reputation, or somebody didn't give us the material we need, or somebody stole from us, or somebody doesn't appreciate us, or somebody burnt the dinner, The disadvantages from the Dharma point of view of engaging in the 8 worldly concerns become very clear. Not only do they make us confused and unhappy in this lifetime, they make us create the negative karma to wind up with more problems in our future lives. And they completely obscure us from utilizing this incredible inner potential that we have, this Buddha nature. Therefore, the line in the sand between a worldly action and a Dharma action is whether an action is done motivated by one of these 8 worldly concerns or not. This is why it can be so tricky with our Dharma practice. We really have to look carefully, because we are habituated to these 8 worldly dharmas, I would say probably from beginningless time. It's really, really strong in us. So as we work through our spiritual practice, we have to be very vigilant and aware, where is my motivation here, and sometimes it gets confusing. So here's a review, and we'll close it up. This discussion was done under the topic of thinking about death, because by thinking about death, it gives us a way to look at our own life so that we can live more peacefully now, prepare for our future lives, and realize our incredible potential. If we don't think about death, we won't think about the Dharma. So we won't think about using our potential or planning for future lives or doing anything spiritual. If we don't think about death, then even if we think about the Dharma, we procrastinate, we postpone our Dharma practice. Or even if we remember the Dharma, we don't do it purely because our mind gets all mixed up with these 8 worldly concerns. Like being generous so we'll have a good reputation. If we don't think about death, then even if we practice the Dharma, our practice won't be consistent, it won't be intense, it won't have the right kind of energy behind it. We'll be on again, off again. All of our excuses and rationalizations overpower us, and we create a lot of negative karma, and then we act destructively. And that at the time of death, we'll have a lot of regret when we look back on our whole life and we ask ourselves, what was the meaning of my life? What was the purpose? What do I have that I can take with me? Whether we'll have a lot of regret or not at the time of death depends on how we acted during our life. If we've been very involved, especially with attachment to the happiness of this life, seeking material things, praise, reputation, sense pleasures. If we've been spending all of our time trying to hold on to our material possessions, trying to keep from being criticized, from having a bad reputation, from experiencing anything unpleasant with our senses. As long as we spend our time like that, then at the time we die, we're going to have a lot of regret, because what have we done with our human potential? Not that much. We may not have gotten all the pleasures we wanted, but they're all over anyway. And when we die, all the pleasures from the 8 worldly concerns, all the pleasures from the happiness that we get in this life, go as if they were last night's dream. When we wake up in the morning, it doesn't really matter what we dreamt about last night, because it's over. Similarly, we may have been completely obsessed with somebody criticizing us yesterday. How can they do this to me? We get so upset because of this criticism. Or we might have gotten so entranced with when somebody said, I love you, you're so wonderful, you know? You're so talented, you're so creative. But today, all that happened yesterday is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The pleasure, the pain, the aversion, it's like sand falling through our fingers. There's nothing to show for it at the end of the day. So why get so upset, anxious, and neurotic about all these attachments and aversions? It's better if we can use our energy to transform our mind, and that means to practice the Dharma. So, now we go. Any more discussion about any of this? It's 12:37. We're a little over time.
Just thank you for all the hard work you're doing. It helps us kind of see it very clearly, you know.
You're completely welcome. Really, we should be thanking Venerable Thubten Chodron.
Thubten Chodron.
Chodron, Lama Tsongkhapa, Pabanka Rinpoche, all of our gurus. That's, I mean, the only reason, you know,
Right.
any of us know
We're
any of
doing
this
this.
stuff is because of our teachers. Really, that's
Yeah.
how it. We're just, it's just, the idea is just sort of, you know, keep moving it on, keep bringing it forward, keep making it alive for whatever
Right.
culture we live in, you know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, let me
Do closing prayers, I guess, then.
closing prayer. So what I want to do is I want to get to this. I want to share the screen. See how good I am at this. Not really. Where's my prayers? Where's my prayers?
You're getting better, Christopher.
I'm getting better, but you know, I just put on my screen every single document that's on my
Right.
yes. You probably don't see this yet, do you?
Yeah, we
You
do.
do?
Yep.
So do you see the prayers?
Right now, yes, now the prayers are up front. Yep.
You see, okay, dedication prayer. All right. Now we're gonna do the dedication prayers. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may liberate all sentient beings from suffering. Jang Chup Sem Chok Rim. Let's do it in English. I can't sing, I've been talking too much. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And let's do this Guru dedication. We'll finish with the Guru dedication. In all my rebirths, may I never be separated from perfect spiritual masters and enjoy the magnificent Dharma. Completing all the qualities of the stages and paths, may I quickly achieve the state of Vajradhara, you know, the primordial Buddha. May anyone who merely sees or hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me be instantly freed from all suffering and abide in happiness forever. It is only from the kindness of my Guru that I have met the peerless teachings of the Buddha. Thus, I dedicate all merit so that all sentient beings in the future may continue to be guided by kind and holy gurus. All right. So that takes care of it. Kabir, you end the recording?